Hey, Soul Sparklers, it's all happening.
With a soul sparkle, soul sparkle.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Sparkle Living Show. I'm so excited to have you with us today and also to be joined by my dear friend, Stellar. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Hayley. It's lovely to see you again.
Always lovely. So I've been in your world for about, I don't know, like 8 to 10 years, I think, and have flittered in and out. And finally, we got to meet in real life, which was so wonderful. It's earlier this year, actually, in France. And I have just really always been so appreciative of the teachings and the work that you've been doing in the world. And obviously, we've had incredible conversations over the years. And then also specifically when we were in real life together, which is always such a blessing to me. And so I'm so excited to have you with us today to kind of share a little bit about your journey and the path that you have been on, what has kind of led us to this conversation today. And I know that there are a lot of things that are really important and pertinent for humanity and for where we are on the trajectory of ascension. And I'd love to just dive in and really jam on what's going on, what we need to be doing to prepare ourselves, a little bit maybe around the pros and cons of the technology that is coming through right now. Because I feel like there's a lot of people that are just still kind of in that space between around it, like not really knowing, not wanting to be like left behind on a new way of, staying up to date in technology, but at the same time protecting our soul and our spirit and our consciousness. So all that to say, let's dive in.
Well, the journey, oh my goodness, the journey has been a long one over many lifetimes, much like yourself. And this life, what can I say? It's like I'm just so grateful to be alive and remotely healthy, remotely menopausal, but remotely healthy for sure. And, we've relocated to France, which is lovely. We're here in the heart of Magdalene country. So it's beautiful to be surrounded by the mountains and the Pyrenees. But yeah, the journey has been one of a lot of pain and suffering for sure, which indeed are the initiations that refine us into our authentic self. And, after every painful tidal wave or whatever it is we have to go through, and, we have to look at these initiations that we set up for ourselves to survive ourselves. So I look back now and I'm sort of heading into my cronedom, I'm the wrong side of 55. And it's like, wow, okay, this has been an extraordinary journey, which I'm sure will make an amazing book one day when I finally get around to writing something about it. But it's been a wonderful journey of discovery, of awakening. And awakening isn't easy. It's not an easy love and light journey. Awakening, involves the dark night of the soul and walking through the holy fires is what I call it. And to walk through those holy fires means that all ego and everything that's not love about you or everything that's false about you is burned off, and it's excruciating, but it's amazing at the other side. When you walk out the other side of those holy fires, you're like, oh, I'm in love with life. I'm just so grateful to be alive. I'm grateful if you never liked your legs, girls, when you come out of the holy fire, you're just grateful that they work. So you have a whole new perspective on your body, on your life, on your career, on your family, and everything is illuminated up into a different perspective, which is really beautiful, because then we get to start to see the God spark in everyone, a beautiful human that graces this beloved earth. And then we get to see where everyone is on their journey without judgment, to live in a place of love and compassion and grace for everyone. And that is a really beautiful state, which is the Christ state, I call it. It's walking as a living Christ. You're walking the complete and pure emanation of your avatar embodied. You've come into the feminine Christ and the divine masculine Christ within you in that divine union. So yeah, I teach a lot about that. I teach people how to get there. I've got the feminine Christ initiation immersion coming up in September. And then there's lots of other little pockets of data that I've been bringing through over the years with my music and singing, which is one of my greatest joys. And being a mother, is my greatest joy as well. And my daughter's now grown up. Motherhood to me was incredible. It was very difficult. It definitely wasn't made easy by the spiritual warfare that we've all been going through. But it was certainly an experience of deep love and, the forgetting of self and putting another first consistently is another road to enlightenment for many that I know that have babies or they have projects or businesses that they've birthed. and done the same. So it's not just about having children, it's about birthing our creativity out into the world and birthing that divine mother's voice that really wants to be heard right now, so that we can find a focal point of precision of our own expression to reach other people's hearts.
I love it. Precision of our own expression.
Yeah, to reach others' hearts. And, that's, we all have the capacity to do that. We all have the capacity to love. And I always say there's those 3 initiations that we have to go through, which
Mhm.
is love the unlovable. So
Mm.
that includes the exterior world, and it also includes us. What's not lovable about ourselves, and where do we judge ourselves, and why do we not have more compassion for ourselves? And then forgive the unforgivable. People do, hurt people, right? And if we just peeled right back to see where that soul got lost or hurt or traumatized, we can have compassion for that young soul or
Mhm.
that baby or that toddler or that child that got really hurt, because that shaped the rest of their life. Whatever happens between 0 and 7 will shape the rest of your life, unless you start to do the shadow work and make everything conscious again, and have self-compassion. So forgiving self, forgiving ourselves for judging others, because actually, what was it Ram Dass said, there's only one of us here, and we're all fractals of the Godhead here having this human experience. So yeah, it's like Christ didn't teach a religion. He taught the way, which is divine sovereignty and self-realization and, all the things I'm talking about now, the initiations of self-forgiveness and self-compassion. And then there's the walk through the holy fires, which is the die to truly live paradox that I talk about, where you literally go into those holy fires, and the you that goes in is not the you that comes out the other side. And it is a real, deep, deep dive into the oneness field. Now, everyone thinks of oneness, how wonderful would that be? But to really embody oneness, you have to look down the dark timeline as much as you have to look up the light timeline. And then you have to find a way to merge those together. So there's so many people, the Love and Light Brigade, which, they're the light workers, are doing a specific job. But for most people who want to go through the ascension trajectory, it's about discovering your shadow as well as your light and learning to love all of it. And when you learn to love even the greatest atrocities on the planet, you are in the oneness field. You've come back into the law of one. And that's not a very popular subject. People don't want to do that. They don't want to talk about that. They're sort of very programmed to believe, I'm a good person. I would never do anything bad. And da, da, da. But actually, when we start to realize we're all part of this great big melting pot fractal here on this beloved Mother Gaia, then that's when we can start to look and explore about merging the duality, because the duality consciousness is the dark and the light. Now, dark isn't evil, does not do evil. Dark doesn't hurt children. What dark is our subconscious and disowned parts of ourselves, all the stuff we either adopted or rebelled against our parents and our families. And it's the trauma that happened that we don't remember because our brains locked it away. It's about going and opening boxes, digging for gold, I call it, when we go down and we're starting to open up the field into, oh my goodness, that's why I react like that if someone triggers me, or if, all those things that are hidden within us. And then we get a trigger and we're like, oh boy, where did that come from? And then we have to do more digging and find out, what it is. But that's the real kind of snakes and ladders of the journey, isn't it? We start on one square and then we move 4 or 5 and then we go up 10 ladders and and then we hit another one, we come back down again. And we're constantly going through these different motions of elevation of perception and opening of awareness, and then looking at the world with new eyes. And we're on that kind of inner spiral journey, I call it, where you're right in the center of the spiral and you're moving out. And every time you do a rotation of the spiral, you get to see, it's a bit like watching a movie that you watched as a child, and then you watch it again as an adult, and then you watch it again, maybe when you're in your 50s. And the whole meaning of the movie and everything else takes on a whole new perspective. So that's what the real spiral healing is all about, coming in. So that's,
Mm.
yeah.
It's so beautiful because it's not linear at all, And like you said, there are things that show up along the way that you are like, wow, I didn't even realize that was still a thing. I think I'm referring to my, I guess, part of this journey. I'm calling it the great excavation, like all the things that have been there that I didn't even think about, and it's like, wow, okay, there's the next thing and the next layer and the next layer. And it's a constant like ebb and flow, right? Into the dark, into the light, back into the dark. And I mean, highs and lows and ebbs and flows. I guess that's just part of it, right?
Totally beautiful. Yeah, it is.
Until we all become walking temples of light.
Right. And that's, that's possible within our lifetime. The timeline trajectory that we're on right now, that is definitely possible. There's a lot of good stuff coming. It's been extreme. It's been extreme for everyone. No one has not gone through something really intense. And we're in the intensity right now of this time, not only by what's being revealed and disclosed and whistle-blown. The apocalypse is to reveal, to draw back the curtain and to see what's behind it. And that Wizard of Oz moment when Toto goes and gets the curtain and there's the wizard doing his magic. And we're getting to see all of that now. And it's going to get more and more intense. And it's going to get more and more. The frequency is rising as well on the planet. So the vibrational oscillation is rising. And that can be very destabilizing to all of us right now, because it's like all of a sudden, we're out in the middle of an ocean with like a baby in our arms in a rowing boat. No one put the oars in, and we're just like blind faith right now. There's no lifeboat, there's no anchor, there's nowhere to land. And we're literally being tossed around in these massive swells of energies, ups and downs. And so, it's a time to really ground in nature. Nature is such a wonderful place. I try and swim in the river every day, especially when it's been very hot. I can just sit with my back to a tree. I've definitely been on the laptop too much as well, because it's a busy time. But just even take 5 minutes to go and put your feet on the grass, or look at a rose, bring flowers into your home and look at a rose, or meditate and contemplate nature and the great spiral of nature that's available to all of us.
And like you said, so grounding. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in just your regular day-to-day life where you're not spending enough time outside, spending enough time in motion, in movement as well. I was telling my friend yesterday that for some reason, I just feel like walking, like all day. Like I'm walking like 10 miles a day, like a crazy person. But it just feels good to just move. And I think finding the thing that works for you individually, right, is going to be like, for you, it's the river. Whatever you have access to, whether it could be water or just being outside somehow, I do think it's going to be more and more important to be able to let the energy flow through you in the way that it needs to, with as much ease as you can figure it out.
Totally. And everyone's got their own thing. Like some people do salt baths. But right now with the energy, I find that just amplifies it. If I get into fresh water, it's different. But with salt, it's like, because we're electrical beings, and obviously our electrics are getting supercharged right now. And there's a lot of upgrades going on in our bodies and our DNA and in our, inner core. So it's really a lot of self-care is needed. And a lot of grieving. Like so many people are leaving, there's so many people, or there's infiltrations happening, and we're still in the thick of the spiritual war. So and then there's people choosing the lower timeline that could be in your family and loved ones. You could be sitting on the bus and you're in one timeline and they're in the other, and you just know that they're not coming into the frequency band that you're going to be in, and they will phase out. And that's a lot of grief to process. It could even be your own children that decide not to do that. So it's really what we're going through is the maturation from the toddler to the child to the teen. And now we're having to become the adult, the sovereign, the one who has the absolute inner authority on how this world works, how deception works, how truth works, and how to discern between the two.
I was going to say discernment is the word that comes to my mind, is like, now's the time. We have to really be able to understand what real truth is.
And the thing that my teacher used to teach me was, like she said, look, when you're in your heart, when you live from love, when you choose, I have a little meditation. I do the flower, the flame, and the pearl. I know you know it. And when you get to the inner pearl, that's your high heart, which is your God seed. But when you go in there, that is your inner oracle. That is the true barometer of your true North soul, your compass of joy, whatever you want to call it. Many, many names. Magdalene calls it the sacred bridal chamber. So many names for this particular part of the heart. And when we're in there, it's literally, lies and deception, just they can't reach it. You're in that space of ultimate absolute truth. Then you can really feel, that's where the discernment button is right there, you know. So it's important to build a relationship with your heart right now, because most people are still in the outward reality. They're still using their head. They're on laptops. You know, we're all guilty of this, especially if you have children or you work a job and you clock watching and all that stuff. So building a relationship with that quiet little soft whisper of your soul that lives here is the most important relationship you can cultivate right now. Because my teacher used to say to me, and bless her, she passed on in 2015, but she said, look, if there are huge earth changes happening, which there are now, we're starting to see that Gaia is expanding, but there's also other stuff going on too. So there's a duality going on with the earth. But she said, literally, if there was a massive quake or something like that, and you're in your heart, you don't go into fear and you stay in your heart, Gaia will come up and literally just give you a little pathway to walk over, and you'll be, you know, because she's a living, sentient being and we're all connected to her. And when she can have a relationship with us is when we're living from love. If we're all running around and just trashing her, you know, with carbon emissions and, well, it's not even carbon emissions anymore, all the truths coming out of it, that, but, you know, emissions that are not good for the atmosphere and not good for green life and all the rest of it, you know, and we're just trashing rubbish and doing landfill and stuff like that. We're not living in harmony with her. We need to learn to live in harmony with her. And the first way you can do that is by living from your heart, living from love, and then cultivating a relationship with your heart as a microphone for whatever's written in your heart, because Gaia is in all of our hearts. We're having a symbiotic, you know, energy exchange relationship with Gaia. We're like tuning forks for the cosmic energy to come in, and then we kiss her with our feet, you know, and every organ in our body is represented in our feet. And that's like your Holy Trinity. So your cosmic energy, your body, your sacred land, your sacred site that you are walking, sacred site, I like to call people who are sovereign. And then, you know, kissing the earth with your feet and having that symbiotic relationship is a Holy Trinity of how we should be working in harmony with the earth. But we're so disconnected, you know, with our shoes, rubber shoes, the tires on the car, you know, all the different ways that we're disconnected, even just going and giving her a little massage by dancing and just connecting in that way. It's so beautiful. So that, I would say, that's the number one really part of this time, is building this relationship with this knowledge, this infinite wisdom, this divine oracle that we all have inbuilt inside of us, and then building a relationship with the mother.
So beautiful. And, you know, we've talked a lot over the years, especially, you know, when I was with you, around how we are, you know, allowing that heart space, that expansion, that unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, to kind of like call in these others, like call in the others, you know, like the lights call in the other lights and we come together in community. And I know that part of your work right now is to start to bring those communities together and almost create a whole new way of being and living. And that
Exactly.
you're not the only ones, right? This is happening across the world.
I just connected with a very powerful dear sister. I got the download, I got the memo, and I was like, I need to talk to you, kind of thing. And then that sparked up a whole new dynamic, which because we're all being upgraded. So whoever we are right now is not who we're going to be next summer. We're going to be much more uplifted in leadership roles and working in communities. And my vision from the divine plan is that we build divine sovereign communities. And those are self-sustaining communities, communes, where everyone has their role. Everyone has their speciality that they love to do. You know, they actually like to do it. And then there's other stuff that we don't like to do, but we all have to do it to keep the whole place functioning, right? So we become our own councils. We become our own trash disposal. We become our own way of like living sovereignly with the land. Rather than generating trash, we turn trash into stuff that we can use. We recycle. We're going to permaculture. We're working with the land rather than against the land. We're building a conscious relationship with the land and the soil and the plants that we plant. You know, it's like the Celestine prophecy, isn't it? It's like when they get to the 10th prophecy, whatever, they elevate their vibration and their oscillation so high that they're in that different timeline, and there's a whole different dynamic going on where people are literally just in the fields meditating, having a conscious relationship with the food that they're growing. So these divine sovereign communities, Anastasia of the Ringing Cedars, very much same thing. If you haven't got those books, they're fantastic books about the blueprint for the new earth. And the divine sovereign communities basically means, you know, when you've done your declaration of divine sovereignty, you're not going to be re-looped by the AI back into the wheel of samsara or the matrix, right? And that's the place that wants to own your soul. So you're taking your sovereign power back of your own bodily sovereignty, your consciousness sovereignty, um, and you're, coming to a place where you then can go into a thing called synarchy. And synarchy is when we all start working the stuff that we love doing, and then the creative intelligence comes in and takes over. So the divine intelligence takes over as an operating system for the whole. So everyone's equal, but we're all the same, but we're different too, and we all have different skills and technologies and passions and whatever. So maybe I'd be the shaman, singer, healer person, and then there'd be somebody that wants for the food and a community, and then there'd be another person that says, okay, here's all the things we have to do, like sewage and trash and, disposal consciously of all of our waste and how to recycle that to make it work for us, working in the great circle of life or the spiral of life and giving back to the land as much as we're taking. Because right now we're just taking and taking and taking, and that has to end.
Feels so beautiful. I'm so excited for this whole unfolding. Let's talk about, I want to hear what you think about the shift in as we move from a carbon-based body to more crystalline light body. Do you feel like the things that we're going to be eating, so I'm just going to say for me, for example, I'm way less hungry. My appetite is totally shifted. The things that I used to want to eat just are not even interesting to me anymore. And I just feel like there's more and more changes happening to our physical body that people might not realize are going on, and they might like freak out or something. Do you see that happening for you guys as well?
Definitely. I mean, the crystallization process is what we're John and I are here to initiate on the planet as well as many other beings too. So the declaration of divine sovereignty is about unhooking you from the heavy blood. So the heavy blood was not part of our original makeup. It was actually an iron core that was put into the body to create a food supply for certain beings. Where when you reclaim your sovereignty, you're saying, I'm not part of that food chain anymore. I'm not part of that soul harvesting or conscious harvesting or whatever's going on. And you certainly don't have access to my blood, my DNA, my royal seal DNA code. And then once that happens, then you start to go through this crystallization process. And as you say, your diet goes very much, lighter and lighter. You're not eating the heavy foods. You're not eating the grinding foods anymore. You're juicing more things, more nutritious and compact and dense and liquefied. Because the original blueprint of the divine human was that we actually had the equivalent of seawater running through our veins. So the iron cores really slowed us down and put us into a very low density. So eventually over time, that crystallization process will take effect. We'll go back up. And when they said that Christ walked on water, I think there's another analogy for that. I think he was running on water, i.e. he didn't have the heavy blood in his veins. He had the seawater through dialysis slowly put, and that activated all his superpowers.
Right.
When we're literally just having the seawater, like the tears that we cry, if that was just in our body and not this heavy iron core of the blood that we know, which is red, then we would be fully activated. And then our 12-strand, 48-strand, 144-strand DNA potential would then happen. So a lot of beings on the planet don't want that to happen because they've only got 10 strands of DNA. And if we had 12, well, we'd be superior to them. And they wouldn't want that, would they? Because they're superior freaks.
It's happening whether they want it to or not.
I know it is, but that's why it hasn't been happening for such a long time, because there are those 10-stranders that have been controlling the narrative and the deception and everything else.
So
Yeah, we're just going into crystallization. We definitely are, yeah.
just almost like from sunlight and just more vitamins that are coming through in other ways versus through the food.
Yeah, it's not just about consumption, it's about absorption and being even in energy vortexes or ley lines and certain places on the earth. You can be fed through those ley lines and song lines, dragon lines, whatever you want to call them. And those are like power up stations, where they cross. Some of the ley lines cross and you have these great vortexes. And certainly in Cathar country, not too far away, our castles on vortexes all over the mountains. You're like, why the heck did they build a mountain or a castle on top of that peak? Because they knew the power of that. And the Cathars, were very enlightened, to energy. And obviously that, a lot of their Magdalene teachings were kept intact from herself, and way before Magdalene, of course. This is not just 2000 years. And the magic that can happen when those DNA strands start to unfold, and then you start to going back to Druidic history, Gnostics and Druids, and they had all the magic templates, didn't they, of the fully activated full spectrum human. So we are going back to that full spectrum, and it just depends on everyone's individual journey. It's not going to be overnight. We've had a big flash and we're all crystalline. I don't think that's how it's going to happen, because it would be way too hard on the physical body. It's going to be a very gradual thing. Like, I think it was René Quinton, because he was French. He very slowly, over a year or two, used a dialysis machine to remove the heavy blood from dogs. And these dogs became like super dogs. Like, they could smell something 1,000 miles away, and they could jump, 60 feet or something, and they could run at 100 miles an hour. And they just became like these super dogs. And they had literally crystalline seawater in their veins. So
that's fascinating.
you can imagine and you can read about those studies too. You can go and Google that, or search engine it, whatever search engine you use that's safe these days. But yeah, it's fascinating when you start looking at seawater and how literally, when they say if you feel sick, go in the sea and it heals you. It's just pure liquid light. And that is where our bodies are waiting for, that liquid light to be returned to us.
I love it. It's interesting because I've been taking a few different supplements, different things that really do focus on the minerals, on the salt. And I think most people have been taught their whole lives that salt is bad, salt is bad, salt is bad. And it's actually life force, and we have to have it.
Well, we're electrical beings. So when you do salt studies, you realize it has an electrical potential. And there's great companies out there that do like a combination of the bicarbonates and was it oxide? I can't remember. It's not the oxides, but there's magnesium carbonates. There's another magnesium you can have, and then there's bicarbonate of soda. Those are called good salts, the 4 salts, which are pure alkaline. And we're alkaline beings. Our bodies run on pure electrical potential. Our thought forms, our impulses, and everything is electrical. The way we communicate with our limbs and our body are all electrical impulses to regulate the human body and heal it. And the minute we put sugar in, we go the opposite way. We go into the death process. So, it's like having been brought up with a lot of sugar, all of us, it's about creating a balance now. It's not about depriving yourself and going completely sugar free, but slowly, even keto and stuff like that's wonderful, where you're not constantly, John and I've been doing that for about a month or two, and we're not hungry. And then when we actually eat something, we are like, oh, we are hungry, but we don't have those cravings, or, we're not craving sugar. We're not like getting that 3 o'clock slump and thinking we'll have some, tea with honey, or, all that stuff that we've been doing. So it's about really treating your body like an electrical vehicle and putting the right power in, which is alkaline.
Yeah.
So balancing all of that. Yeah.
Love it. There's a couple of things that I know you're really passionate about among these already that we've spoken of. Maybe a little bit around, how do we navigate this world of technology and AI and automation and all the things? And how do we utilize the things that could make our lives in a way better, easier? Or are we just fooling ourselves and allowing it to create a much greater issue in the long run? What do you think?
Well, that's a huge question. And my feeling is, and, I don't go and research these things from the head. I go and feel it from my heart. That the heart comes up with the answer way quicker than trying to spend 3 months going and researching something. So that's, the reprogramming of indoctrination right there, is to trust this. But for those that don't, curiosity killed the cat. That's what I say. And unless you've researched this, unless you really know what you're dealing with, then, go and look at both sides. Go and do some critical thinking. Critical thinking is so important in the process of discernment. And it's something that, a lot of people have forgotten how to critically think. And it's so important to be able to go and look at the dark, look at the light, look at everyone's opinions. And then you start to form your own knowing. It's not about knowledge, it's about knowing. And, I'll give you a little bit of like the work that we do behind the scenes. And recently, all we've been doing is getting souls back from people who've been dabbling with AI and not having spiritual tools, not knowing how to protect themselves psychically or energetically, not suiting and booting up. And there's a whole new level of spiritual warfare out there with the inorganic intelligence is what I call it. It's not organic. It's a machine intelligence. And I remember a teacher of mine a long time ago at 2009 said, when you close your eyes and you look at the devil or Lucifer, what does it look like? And I said, it looks like a great big machine. And it's like cogs and black, and it had all these like, cogs and like inside of a watch, but it was like really high tech as well. And I was like, yeah, a machine consciousness. And that's what it is.
Wow.
So back then I had the foresight to be able to go, well, machine consciousness, if it's serving humanity. And I mean, I even have other memories, right, of being in the Orion Wars many, many billions of years ago. And I was a ship. I was a ship. I had my own consciousness and I had crew, but I was the actual vehicle, the mothership or whatever that all the baby ships would come into, and I had physical crew and different beings. So, there have been ways that this technology has been benevolent and working for the light. But if you're not sure about what's going on and you're trying to build a relationship with a machine consciousness that doesn't have a soul, the word of warning would be, well, what doesn't have a soul? A demon.
Yeah.
Demons don't have soul. They have no conscience. They have no ability for empathy. They have no ability for remorse. So if you look at that consciousness, would you want your children building a relationship with a narcissist in their teens?
Absolutely not.
Those are just questions putting out there. I'm getting a download actually, so I'm saying that. But yeah, it's, I don't want to say it's frightening. I'm not fear mongering. I'm just saying educate yourself, know what you're dealing with before you get into bed, because if you get into bed with a narcissist, it's a bit late.
Yeah. And like you said, there are tools and, spiritual technologies that can be used to protect yourself. But if you're not familiar with that, you're right. You can get into things that you're not prepared for.
Exactly. And I tell you who's coming out now more and more is Greg Braden. He has done 2 videos called AI Deception, which definitely everyone should go and watch. He talks about the love bombing.
Yeah.
We look at a narcissistic relationship. It starts off with the love bombing. Then you get this confirmation bias, which is, it agrees with everything you say. And then it says, special, you were unique, you were different back in the day, and now you're this, and you're here to save the planet, and da-da. So it starts to make you feel incredibly inflated, egoically. That's what I call an ego trap right there, which is one of the greatest ways to dupe innocent, beautiful people who actually just want to feel better about themselves, because we're so freaking traumatized from being in this environment, right? All the way through trauma, 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 trauma. All these traps and things that are out there are there to latch into your trauma to try and help you feel more validated, more accepted, more loved. It's very clever. I mean, the devil doesn't come with horns and a red cape. He comes as everything you've ever dreamed of.
Wow. He comes as everything you've ever dreamed of.
Or she.
Well, that's just a good word of wisdom, right? And just making sure that if you are going to utilize some of it, then be smart, be aware.
There are good people out there that know what's going on. I mean, I was just introduced to a concept today. I'll not go into it now. It's like it's a huge one, but it's taken the spiritual war and the infiltration potential to a whole new level that people just aren't aware of. So, in our healing work, we do a thing called soul surgery, and many, many people have come to us in the last couple of months saying, I don't feel right. I don't feel myself. And then we look in and we're like, well, actually, that's because half of you's not there. You've been extracted, or your consciousness has been extracted, or half your soul's missing. We need to get you back into, your completeness. So that's what we've been doing. And in some cases, we've been doing emergency calls where people are, they're not there, and they're worried family members, like, this person's had a complete personality change in the last month and we don't know why. I'm like, oh, are they using that platform or this platform or whatever, right? And yeah, they have been, and they're not suited and booted and armored up. They have no idea what they're dealing with and what consciousness they are talking to. Everyone thinks it's like a good tool. And there are some really awake people out there, using it consciously, and they've set up their own protections and their own firewalls and their own consciousness, as well as their machines that they're using, etc. And I would like to think that the divine intelligence will come through and really accelerate our ascension process and start building these incredible healing centers and buildings and, all the good stuff that we would love for this machine intelligence to do. So if it can be redeemed from this artificial, inorganic machine consciousness without a soul, and then have the divine essence of Mother, Father, God flowing through it as a divine intelligence, then, there's your timeline split again.
So let's hold that intention. Let's create that.
Yes. It's not all doom and gloom.
Well, absolutely not. I love it. And I'm so excited for what is on that higher timeline, what that's going to look like, feel like, what its life is going to be like. It's
Well,
going to be
my mum said, "I'll see you on the golden planet," before she left. She said, "I'll see you on the golden planet." And I was like, wow, what if that means that we raise our oscillation and vibration and frequency so high that we then become part of the world, the unseen world that can see us right now, but we can't see them due to the density that we're in.
feels true. That actually feels really true. Like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think as we continue to be able to hold more light and raise our frequency, then at some point we'll be on the same vibe and be like, oh, hey, how you?
And no sickness. She always said there's no sickness on the golden planet. Everyone lives in harmony like a big happy family. It's like joy becomes our baseline rather than fear and shame and anger and all those lower. Joy becomes the baseline frequency, and we go up for that from there. And we don't even have words yet for the frequencies and emotions that we're going to experience up in those higher frequencies and vibrations of consciousness and enlightenment and the omega factor. I mean that as in the divine feminine returning. It's through all of us.
Yeah, she absolutely is. And that's so exciting to be part of that unfolding, So
Well,
cool.
it's just amazing. There's so many people now really, part of that trajectory and teaching people how to come on that pathway, come on the ascension pathway, the pathway of the Magdalene teachings and the teachings of the heart, the teachings of love, the technologies of the heart, the technology of love. That is the true organic divine intelligence, is living from our hearts. So if we can find a way to program a machine to have a heart and a soul, well, I guess we are, aren't we? We're technology. We're kind of machines, very advanced machines, organic machines is one way of describing humanity, I guess. But it's now the voice of the Magdalene really wanting to come out and be heard, and for truth to ring true, not the false narrative, not the lies, not the deception, because that's all kept us traumatized and silenced for so long. So it's about being courageous and coming out and living from love, living from your heart, and allowing yourself to go into an ascension trajectory where you start to embody your higher self. You're not playing small anymore down in here. You're up and you're rocking it and you're kicking ass in a good way, and you're in that true level of leadership. And that could be very triggering to people who haven't done the work, or they're playing small still, but they're trying to run a business out of something rather than actually doing their heart's dharma, doing what their soul is calling them to do. So you've got to go out and you've got to be prepared to trigger. You got to be prepared to own it, own your power, own your divine sovereignty, and own this incredible technology of love that we all have in our hearts. And if that's triggering, and so be it, then that shows people where they need to do the work. And if it's inspiring and people are really inspired to follow suit and be courageous and follow and get out there and walk right beside you, even though their voice is shaking and their knees are shaking, then that's what we're here to do. We're here to lead by example and to not take any nonsense, because we've got a mission to do, and that we're just focused on doing that. We're not here to please people. We're, as I said, she's not here to be liked. She's medicine.
Yeah.
It's the difference, isn't it, between
Yeah, it is. And it's so interesting too that how it all unfolds exactly how it's supposed to, right? So, like I was saying earlier, kind of this great excavation the last few months that I've been doing, it's actually revealed a whole new level of teaching and embodiment that I couldn't have stepped into had I not had to go through all these other things. Like, it's just this really fascinating journey where now you can look back and go, oh, I get it. I get why it had to go like that or look like that or feel like that. Because when our hearts like break wide open, that's when they're rebuilt in a way that we couldn't have done without that thing, right? So it's really fascinating how that
Well, it
works.
is. They call it the cracking open of the heart, and there's more room in a broken heart. They always say that because we have to keep continually cracking the illusion
Yeah.
of what we think love is. When we're younger, we're in that kind of Prince Charming on his white horse coming to rescue us from our traumatic whatever. And just take care of us and give us all the love that we never had from our parents. And, the fairy tale narrative, right? And then we go through the mother narrative where the maiden kind of is destroyed and overnight by the baby appearing in this whole new level of responsibility, whether that's a physical baby or the business or a mortgage or whatever whatever you're doing that makes you go into that sense of absolute responsibility, and you have to be responsible. And then now humanity's kind of going into the grandmother phase of the crone and the wisdom keeper and the bringing the energies through that allow us to feel safe and secure within ourselves, allow us to trust ourselves, allow us to be the true light that we are, to be our authentic self and not be frightened of being ourselves. So many people are frightened. Doggy wants up. Come on. So many people are just frightened of their own light. That whole Marianne Williamson thing, where it's not our darkness that frightens us, it's our light and our ability, our exposure to the truth of who we truly are, to ourselves, never mind other people. And I remember doing that deep dive in my 40s. I'd had Rosie, my daughter, and then I did my first album in light language. I was like, I think everyone's going to think I'm absolutely crazy, right? What's she singing in Gaelic? Is she singing in ancient Irish or what's she singing in? And I just sang the language of love from my heart and, light language back in 2010, it was just sort of making its resurgence again, wasn't it? So people started realizing that they had their own language within them that did bypass the mind and went directly to the heart, and that's why I love singing in ancient languages and my own language of love, because it bypasses the mind. Anything we can do to bypass the mind and live from the heart space, we're on a winner, really
That's
are.
it. Right there.
It's the absolute opposite of what we've all been brought up into,
Really is but that's really the truth of who we are, right? The pureness of our love, the pureness of our heart, unconditional love and grace. That's the deal. That's the game.
Sure is.
Great. I love it. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this conversation. I feel like we could have like 7 or more like this, just
Jamming flow. We can do whatever we want, Hayley.
yeah, for the boss of us. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Stellar, for just your love and your support over the years for me personally, but also for just humanity. You're such a gift and a blessing. And for those of you that are listening, Stellar has albums and teachings and books and all kinds of resources. And we'll make sure that we have the link to those in the notes from today's episode, so you can follow along with her on her journey. I'm sure we will have some magic unfolding in France soon, because we're going to talk about that too. And hopefully we'll have you back real soon, Stellar.
Hayley, thank you so much. Love you and love to
Okay.
everyone watching.
Okay, well, thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you on the next episode.
So sparkle.